Oh,
So remind me, is that on Zoom? Go through all those steps and be on Google and all that.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Is that on Zoom? Could I watch it on? Yes, we one time you guys, I don't want to watch the classes, I'm gonna like migrate over.
So you do, though. So what you're misunderstanding is to watch it after it's recorded, you have to go to the classroom.
Because I almost
Yeah,
Anyway, the search
to watch it, but I still need to say that.
yeah, so we presented on Zoom, but but when we record it, we post it.
Now it's 1 foot, that's the size and bigger than other special shoes we want. We need to put all people right now, getting hiring. And yes, no, like. Because that muscle is not like real muscle, it's not like that muscle.
All right, so I'm gonna give this just a minute.
You think it's set that, is that quick to
His
do?
cell phone was like this. It was.
I don't know, I didn't have to do it because I'm the creator of the account, so.
I know there's somewhere, a band, there's just trying to be, it's buried somewhere probably.
It's not like this, Dr. Sebastian. But what happens if I don't know?
See, and just, you can, and then,
Who's a, that a DoorDash driver driving not his own car, but someone else's.
no, I don't trust motorcycles, and I don't trust people to see motorcycles. Yeah, but then people's got a motorcycle, it's a dirt bike, and just be careful. Always wear your gear and jump right up the street.
See, he's right, all the right to the red text mission on. He didn't have his boots on, and he only did have his boots on. They look good.
Like I said, those guys cruising with just their shorts on, sandals.
So it's very colorblind. Just had a question. It was a little issue. So I'm thinking, but and he has literally his foot right now, it's healed, but it was an officer, but.
It'll just start to smooth out over time, I'm sure.
Yeah, so one of the things is the heel, there's it's like a chiclet, right? And then. Roll it off. And to get that to that again is like almost impossible. That's what one of the first guy said. So most of the time, people will go to great lengths to try to save the foot. It goes in a couple of years since they were banging them through the foot. Because pain and everything else. And so far, it seems to be.
That is why I really love cars and trucks. Yeah, and I got it with grandma, so I put myself in a weird place. She did not help me to recover from something like that. You know, it's.
So it's changed his life forever.
My son went back yesterday on a hike.
You're not that young anymore, right?
No,
How many pounds is he?
he's 1 year old, so I shouldn't be saying anything, but we went on like a 10-mile hike through like some terrain. I was smart able to actually walk. Not.
Yeah, it just get along with that.
So it's. All the. Keep me on top here. It's huge.
Well, if you wanna do the outdoors, then you have to have baby and will travel, that's what we used to say when the kids were little. If there's any advice I can give you raising your kids, the more you go outside and get away from this, the better off. My husband was scoutmaster of the Boy Scout group and the Eagle Scouts, and that's all they did was hiking and get done, film on that, which trail. You know, and I just think that was the healthiest thing for the upbringing that we could ever have.
Totally, right? That's why our membership is due.
What I want to do. This is one of the best.
So you can go check it out.
Oh my God. Well, she.
No. Like, and I'm super excited.
Oh.
This morning. Yes. Signed up a modeling contract, so I don't have to work anymore.
Yeah. So this is my, favorite picture.
But Nicole, is she in the office here? She has Texas number.
Well, she moved to.
Okay.
She lives in.
Yeah, I shot her a text and it worked everything for me.
Yeah.
Thanks for not including me on all the different emails.
So this is my favorite picture of all time. That's my oldest. He's 30 now.
Oh, wow.
I used to go to the little gym and here's the little one. And he could swing and yeah. That's it.
94.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy that. Obnoxious.
You can't miss it.
No.
This is becoming a teenager.
Anthony Bailey.
Now he looks like a mountain man.
What does he do?
He is an engineer.
Cool.
He's an engineer in the Netherlands is in the Air Force or Space Force. This is their finance house. We had a walkthrough today. Why? It's like the therapist.
Done, we help me make sure that systems are fine tuned and everything.
Absolutely. He's there now. He looks like a mountain man.
Sure does.
Get no hair. This is a problem. But this is beautiful. Yeah, so she was a traveling physical therapist and, they, are going to, she's taking a permanent position as well. They like, that telephone and taking.
Just do. Ah.
That's where the news is sort of 2D system. She's like this tall on me. It's just that.
Okay.
She's married a, I can see that. Not, and she did it so big, so quick. Don't know why it was good. She got it. And we like that way, so we did our first one for 14 this summer. Ever.
Nice, I got 12 on that.
So you,
Love them.
you get right.
That's why I need to get going, so I can take one guy with me, not trying to hold.
Yeah, we did not cover this, and then we brought Shona a little bit, and, actually, there were so many rocks and stuff, I was worried that it wasn't ripped up, but she did okay.
They make those boots.
Yeah, I got them now, yeah, in hindsight, and there was snow on top, so we were cold, it was a different terrain, in fact, so they would so coming down. We slid down our bus.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is ridiculous, we saw some other people do it, and then we're like, we're gonna do that.
Yeah, that's very, and it messages me, but you know, just like.
Yeah, because you're going down and you're so.
Yeah.
We just came, then we had snow cover afterwards.
Yes.
And we put minus one. Then we got burned. Dog was freezing cold and then like to go on. Yeah, she was shivering. She was crazy. We'll see what we have. It was so fun. I mean, it's like we built our lives.
Yeah. Okay. I think we'll start with the same price and then we'll see what kind of action we get and, whether or not we need to, drop it once we get into it, but we'll start where we were. Cause back on market, it'll land back in people's inbox, and then if we don't get a lot of action, we can always go in and do a small price reduction to get it back in inboxes.
I agree.
Yeah, there's a little bit of strategy there sometimes, so we'll see what the market requires us to do. Sometimes coming back on market is enough, sometimes, you know.
So I have more, you're outside.
Anyways, I'll see what I can find out. Okay, thanks so much. Bye-bye. Hi. Oh my God, she exists.
I'm sure what you sorry. That's it.
So we'll get started in just a minute.
Yeah, so it's all things that I'm looking into.
Yeah, I think it's much better this year. But we're not being that. Yeah, my videos is communicating. I thought.
Yeah, Mr. Baldwin's. Yes, it is something, yes, you want to call.
All right. Which way am I coming?
Hey,
Hi.
do you have any alcohol in the town hall? I mean, that's. So nice.
Darling, you have sign writers today. In the meantime.
Sorry to hear that.
I made a time now, but I didn't know he said it, so.
Yes.
All right, so do you have anybody? I don't think anybody's calling in today. Okay, cool. All right, so, we're gonna start today on, brain, where did my brain go? Okay, hello. Oh, don't do this to me. Just did this to me last week. Ah, are you kidding me? Okay, there it goes. Every once in a while, it decides it doesn't want to pull up the sidebar. And I don't know why it does that. I will. So we're gonna start today on, Inbox Hero. This is the third of the Jason Pantana series. It's really geared towards mass email and how to use mass email along with some other tools. I did go in last night and adjusted the training schedule. So if you guys remember how to get to it, it is off of our website under agent resources. I put the recordings in there from the last couple sessions, for those who need to go back and catch them. Remember, that's through Google Classroom, so you have to follow the instructions that, Caitlin posted on, BAM for you to be able to see those videos. Once you do those instructions once, you'll be in the classroom indefinitely, and so you'll be able to see whatever it is we post there.
That's the Tom Ferry recording session, so I heard with Andy for a second.
Andy sends those out, but what I am doing, I started this last night, is, most of his sessions are not in the classroom, but like this listing series is. And then when he does the buyer series, that would be in there. So a lot of the old recordings are in there because, again, not all of what we're trying to create is a learning management system. And so if you're in the Tom Ferry coaching calls, you get those recordings and you have 30 days to listen to them or download them. We selectively download some of them for the learning management system, like I'm doing with his listing series. But a lot of his stuff along the way, you know, it's been 30 minutes of Caitlin or Nicole or Travis, or, you know, that's not necessarily something I want to stick in the learning management system. So, for other agents down the road. When we're done with the Inbox Hero, we'll be moving on to, prospecting and farming and those kinds of things, looking at Vulcan 7 or any of those kinds of tools, and then marrying that in with listings to leads. And then I've got Mike from Parker, the Parker office, coming in to do a workshop similar to what we did this week on social media and Google, but we'll be focused on kind of the whole picture and how do you maybe want to pull things together in terms of maybe automating. You know, I think I've shared this with a few of you, like, Mike showed me, he's got a sold.com lead, he's got it set up through Zapier, that'll do this automation for him. It'll send a text, it'll send an email, it'll generate a postcard through things.io, it'll put it into Home IQ or HomeBot, whatever it is you want to do to manage these various different lead types of yours. You can then move to automate it using a variety of these tools that we've been learning. So, so that's kind of, what you're gonna see through, about early mid-March, okay? Anything before we get going? Questions? Okay. We will get rolling.
From there, moving to the second called flying power. Cold email and warning. What does it mean to get consent? Who can I email? Who can't I email? We'll even talk a little bit about some of the laws that impact what we can and can't do in terms of email marketing. Although I'll tell you right now, I'm not an attorney, so keep that in mind. Next up.
Sorry, I have to experiment with which sound works best.
When you send out emails, what are the best ways to do that? How do you optimize a campaign? What are things that you should never do and turn out like destroy it? We'll talk at length about the edicts of email, the rules of email, whatever words you want to get to it. That module is really predicated on the idea of how do I do email like a smart money. And then we get to module 4, which is kind of like the bread and butter of the course. This is when we actually start coming up with what we're thinking. So everything up until module 4 is about the ins and outs and intricacies of the subject of email marketing. I'm not trying to discredit it. You need to watch those things. They're highly valuable and useful. But then when we get to module 4, we talk about what goes in your emails. What are the actual campaigns? We talk about different types of campaigns, and we give you a bunch of examples so that you can basically put your own versions into effect in your emails. And then finally, module 5, the last module, we talk about tracking metrics. Specifically, what are the metrics that we should be paying attention to tell us, like, is this campaign working or not? Is my marketing strategy working or not? And so that you can ultimately evolve your approach over time. And we also dropped in some techniques to build your list bigger and bigger and bigger. and grow your audience and grow your reach, because by this point in time, I just know you're gonna be a prolifically amazing email marketer. Again, I'm so pumped you're here for this course. It's time to truly harness the most effective marketing medium on planet Earth. That's email. So let's dive in. Well, here's the interesting fact about email. I thought so. That's why you signed up for the course. Get this, 35% of marketers send 3 to 5 emails every single week. Hence, ergo, you're not sending enough email. And I know what you're thinking, they're like, emails, you're sending 3 emails a week. They must be getting like a crazy unsubscribe rate. They must not be performing. And I'm like, oh, much rare. They wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't working. The reality is email is one of the most effective marketing channels, bar none, ever in existence. The challenge is that most folks in our industry, I'm going to kind of dog us for a little bit, we don't use email effectively. That all changes here, right now. In this course, we're going to go from the A to Z in terms of how to really dial up your email marketing strategy, because let's keep dumbing some factoids on you right now. 4 out of 5 marketers also say they would sooner give up social media than give up email. Why? Because the ROI is crazy. It's estimated that for every dollar you spend on email marketing, you generate $42 in revenue. The ROI is indisputable. You're just not sending enough email. So here's a hypothetical rhetorical question for you to go over. How good would your email strategy have to be in order for you to send basically 3 emails a week? Or better yet, what if you send an email every day? How good would the content have to be in order for that email, you would look at it and say, it's our #1 marketing chip. That's what I want. That's what this course is designed to help you do, is to put email marketing in its place at the very top of your marketing mix.
Small ones are killing me.
In this course, we're talking about email marketing. Specifically, we're talking about mass email marketing, also dubbed bulk email marketing. What is mass email marketing? It's a pretty simple definition. It's basically being the sender, sending an email to a list of recipients who have essentially opted in to receive that communication. It's a one-to-many mechanism. Everyday email, like just sending off an email or Gmail or whatever I might use for my regular mailbox, that's just one-to-one, everyday, regular use email. Sure, I can send an email where it's like, okay, I'm going to CC, I don't know, a dozen or 2 dozen people, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about real marketing email where you actually put effort into building the content and sending out email that moves the needle in terms of positioning your agent brand in the minds of your customers. Everyday email like Gmail, like Yahoo, like Outlook, those are called mailbox providers. We're talking about email service providers. So what's the difference? Well, a mailbox provider, they are the keepers of all the email addresses. You probably have a Gmail address or something along those lines. And that's a highly competitive space. So we're going to talk a lot about how I get past spam filters, how do I get my emails delivered into the inboxes across all those different mailbox providers. Again, Gmail, Yahoo, all those types of providers. But they're not the ones that we're utilizing to send a mass email. We're using an email service provider. I'll talk about some examples in the next one, which is a different company altogether. They have their own servers, they have their own emails, they have their own tools. We build our campaigns inside their platform and we distribute to our list. So the way that this works in terms of order of operations is, you have mailbox providers. They're the keepers of all the email addresses. You have email service providers. They're the tool that we use to send our mass email, our bulk broadcast email to all the recipients. And the mailbox providers, they're the ones that filters and the rules that we have to dot and get by to make sure that we get our emails placed in the inboxes of every one of our recipients. Because what good is an email that goes to junk? The email is only good from a marketing standpoint if it's actually seen, opened, and read by the intended recipient. Let's kind of break it down into the different types of email marketing you may be accustomed to seeing just in the email marketing space. There are 3 variations to discuss. First and foremost, you're probably used to seeing what we would call alerts or drinks. It's a type of mass email. It's a type of email marketing. So for example, somebody sets up a custom home search on your website, and whenever a home hits the market that meets the criteria of that search, bam, it fires off automatic drinks. It's an alert. So those types of automatic email trips, they are kind of one-to-one. It's going to one recipient, but you're relying upon a third-party tool to help you facilitate that email. And so it falls under the domain of email marketing. Our second type of email under this umbrella of email marketing is what's known as triggered emails. So I'll give you another example. Let's imagine I go to Ray-Ban's website, I'm gonna buy a pair of sunglasses. And so I put it in my cart, and then I abandon my cart before I actually pay for them. Well, I'm willing to bet you, because this has happened to me before, that that's going to trigger some kind of an email that says, oh no, Jason did not finish his order, and we already have his email address. Let's email him and try to get him to close the loop and come back and actually buy those sunglasses. That's a triggered email. It's triggered because there was something that caused it to happen. Something tripped the wire, and that condition initially was sitting in that email. However, the kind of email marketing we're going to really dive into in this course is called broadcast email marketing. Again, it's a synonym for bulk email, mass email, broadcast email. I'm describing the same thing. It's your email campaign, one to many, to the entirety of your database, your recipients, used in your marketing-based email communications. This isn't your everyday email. It's something way bigger and way better. Okay, so we did a brief overview of the difference between an email service provider and a mailbox provider, like a Gmail or like a Yahoo. But let's talk about what an email service provider actually does, because that would better describe what they actually are. So an email service provider is a software that you can actually hire. Sometimes they're free, sometimes they cost money, but they actually help you build and manage the list of recipients to whom you send your email campaigns. What's more, they also provide you with some basic building tools so you can actually design the email campaigns themselves, and then they send the emails on your behalf. So there's basically three things an email service provider does. They manage their list, they provide tools to build the campaign, and then they actually send the campaign to the recipients on the list. That's it. Now, naturally, there's going to be a lot of pros and cons in terms of which email service provider should I go with? And the answer is going to be somewhat subjective, because I've talked to folks who use one provider and love it, and then somebody else says they hate that provider, but it really is in the eye of the beholder to some degree. So I'm going to give you a list of options, but it's up to you to kind of dig into each one on your own and make sure it's a good fit for your intended purposes. So for example, there's BombBomb, MailChimp, Constant Contact, Aweber, ActiveCampaign, HubSpot, ConvertKit, Keep, SendGrid, Campaign Monitor, and OmniSend. That's just a starting list. There are tons of email service providers to consider. And so I think what's important for you now is to be asking the right questions about each of those different softwares so you can make a choice that's best for your business and your goals. So the first question I would ask is this software suited or geared towards small or small-ish businesses? Because a lot of these softwares, it gets really competitive and they're all trying to kind of out-feature each other because they want the enterprise level accounts. If you don't have 1,000 employees or something like that, there may be a lot of tools and features and things you're paying for in the software you choose that you don't even use. So I would be asking the question, does this company cater to small or medium businesses like mine? The next question is, does the software that I'm picking do the right stuff for me? Because they all do different things, and some things they do really, really well, and some things they don't do as well. So what do you want it to do? And that really goes down to your strategy, your goals. For example, some email service providers are really great with like building out bulk email campaigns. Their software for actually editing and designing campaigns is amazing. Some of them are incredible with like setting out what happens if somebody doesn't open up an email for 12 straight emails. And they can build kind of spin-off triggered wayback sequences and all kinds of stuff that we're going to talk about throughout the course. But it comes down to what are you trying to build? What do you want your email to do for you? What needle are you trying to move in your business? And then look for the tool that does the job for you best. Another really important question is, does this software provide really good, like I can talk to a human who knows what they're doing kind of support? Because I know I said, do they cater to small businesses? I did not say, are they so tiny we don't actually have any help or support? It's really important that you have someone at the company that you can reach out to if there's an issue to solve the challenge. The last question I would ask is whether or not the company is absolutely held it and completely committed to protecting their reputation and your reputation. In this course, we're going to cover a lot on spam traps and spam filters and the ability to deliver an email into the inbox and all the different like hoops you have to jump through to actually be successful at doing that. Your reputation matters a lot. Email marketing is only effective if it gets delivered. And so it's super critical that they choose a company that checks all the boxes based on what you're looking to accomplish in your business. And email marketing is making a list, checking it twice, because guess what? The mailbox providers are going to find out who's naughty or nice. So first and foremost, when it comes to email marketing, you really should be thinking about the fact that you're marketing to a list. For instance, I was talking to an agent a couple of years ago, and this really resonated with me. You know how real estate is kind of a geographic-based business. If I sell houses in X area, I think moving somewhere else far away and starting over sounds really hard because you're starting from scratch. So I'm talking to this team leader who had a great business in like Michigan. And then he moves to like Florida, halfway across the country to restart his business literally from scratch. And what was so crazy is the first year in Florida was a record year of their business. And so I was like, well, how did that happen? He said, well, our top lead source is historically referrals. Referrals from past clients, spirit influence contacts, other agents around the US, around the world. That's their top lead source. And he said, you know, the thing is, if you give me a list, I'm really good at marketing. And I was like, that's what marketing is. If I give you a list, can you market to it? Which is what he did through email, through postcards, through calls and texts, and a variety of mediums. I know we're talking about email, but I want to remind you that when it comes to marketing, it begins with the list, the who. Who are we talking to? Because that's the privilege. That's the opportunity. You're marketing to a list. Now, who's on the email marketing list? For most businesses, broadly speaking, it's just customers or visitors who have given over an email address at some point in the existence of that business, and they basically said, hey, we're willing to get marketing communications from said business. That's most businesses. In real estate, it typically consists of leads that have been generated over the agent's career, past clients, spirit influence contacts. We'll talk more about who's on the list in terms of specifically do we have their consent, but broadly speaking, an email marketing list is just people who have said, I'm willing to hear from this business in a marketing capacity. Now, let's talk a little bit more deliberately about what it means to quote unquote opt in. Technically speaking, in terms of consent, there's two types of opt-ins. There's a single opt-in and there's a double opt-in. What's a single opt-in? A single opt-in is I go to your website, for instance, I fill out a form, I give my email address, and then bam, I press submit. My email address is gone. It's yours. It belongs to the business. I'm in. That's a single opt-in. A double opt-in is when you, for instance, fill out that form and say I'm in, but you're actually not in yet. That company will send an automatic email to verify that that is in fact your legitimate email and that you do want to receive the offers or get on that list. And you have to verify it from your own inbox. So it actually makes you say that you want to be on the list twice. What's the reason for doing that? Well, there's a lot of speculation that says you'll get better engagement from your subscribers if they agree to be on email list twice. The only thing is there's really not a lot of data that supports that. So whether you do a single opt-in or a double opt-in is for the most part, you will log in. The major point to be considered right now is did people on your email list actually subscribe?
I'm gonna skip that. Yeah. Sorry, I hate the intros.
When I was new to real estate, I joined the real estate team. And on the team, I had kind of two jobs. I was responsible for the team's marketing and I was also a selling agent. And I remember that one of my job responsibilities was to send out our email to the database. And I was like, no problem, I got it, I'm comfortable with software. When do you want to meet to talk about what goes in the email? That was the question I posed to my team leader. When should we discuss what we're actually sending out to the database? And his response was surprising. He said, meet? We don't need to meet. He said, I don't care what goes in the email. All I care about, he says, is that when they get that email in their inboxes, it says my name, comma, realtor. That's all I care. Now, I have this condition that whenever somebody says something with which I just completely disagree, I can't help but say so. So I said, okay, well, what happens when every time we send an email to their inboxes and they see your name, comma, realtor, that they grow to hate you incrementally more because every time we're spamming them? The fact is, sending emails to your database is a privilege. Those folks are opting in to the innermost parts of communicating with them, their phones, their computers. Email is a privilege, and yet so many agents, and I say this with love, they're being misled by these third-party companies that say, you're too busy for email. You shouldn't have to do email on your own. Use us. We'll send all the emails to your people on your behalf. Don't worry about making all the content. We've got you covered, Link. Really this. Let's pretend we became friends over the course of the year, and I came to you and I said, hey, every December, my family sends out a little holiday greeting card. Can we add you to the list? We'd love to mail you our family's holiday card. And you're like, absolutely. This cements and solidifies our friendship. My address is 123 Banana Street. We'll send you one from our side too. And I'm like, great. And so this card goes out sometime, I don't know, call it mid-December. And I can imagine you walk into your mailbox to pick up the mail that day. And then you see an envelope with the return label back to me. You're like, this is the day. I'm going to get this holiday card. This cements the relationship. And then I want you to imagine you're expecting a holiday greeting card. It's probably pictures of my wife, my kids, my family, stuff like that. But instead, you peel back the envelope and you pull out a TJ Maxx stock photo stripped out of a picture frame, and it's somebody else. Does that feel authentic? Does that feel real? Does that feel like I took care in terms of adding you to my list? And the reality is, no, it doesn't. Sending email is a privilege. But this notion that you can email versus actually putting in love and effort into making the content is a misnomer. Don't believe those lies. Content is contribution. If given the choice between canned email or an email that somebody actually put effort into producing, the homemade, put the love and effort into a campaign is always going to win. The fact is, if you want to generate value out of your email marketing efforts, then you got to be first to give the value. Let's talk about the laws of the land. I'm excited to talk about rules and governing policies that impact what we can and can't do as an email marketer. And the rules vary from country to country. Now, let me disclaim for a second and tell you, I am not an attorney. You should not take legal advice from me. I am not telling you what you can and can't do or the entire scope of the laws. However, what I am going to try to do is lay out what are the biggies, what are the big laws that impact email marketing, and what are some of the highlights or major points of emphasis in those laws? But ultimately, I'm encouraging you, I'm instructing you to go do your own research and draw your own conclusions in terms of what it means that you can and can't do in your own email marketing. Rule number one is the ever so exciting Can-Span Act of 2003. This is a US federal regulation, it's a law, and it's got four major tenets in terms of what it says email marketers must do or must not do in their email marketing. First off, your commercial email marketing. I'm talking about bulk email, mass email, but really any email that you do technically falls under the guidance of the Can-Span Act. You must clearly display the sender identity. So in other words, I can't try to hide the fact that it's me, it's my business sending the email. The reply to address the identity of the sender has to be super clear. Rule number two is you don't get to bait and switch the subject line. The subject line has to be relevant. It has to be clear. It has to be on topic with the actual email. If your subject line says, I don't know, free beer, just so people will open it up, technically you're probably violating the Can-Span Act. So don't do that. The third major tenet of the Can-Span Act of 2003 says that your email must disclose a physical, valid, legit address, basically your brokerage address or wherever your business operates from. That address is typically found in the footer section, the bottom of an email campaign. It's actually required to be there according to the Can-Span Act of 2003. And finally, number four, the fourth major tenet coming out of the Can-Span Act of 2003 is that your email campaigns must have a mechanism for opting out, for unsubscribing. There has to be some kind of a way where the recipient gets an email that says, let me out of this place. There has to be some kind of a mechanism to unsubscribe. Now, Canada has similar guidance or laws. They call theirs the Canada Anti-Spam Legislation, or CASL, is what you might hear it called. So the first major principle or tenet of the Canada Anti-Spam legislation, just like what the Can-Span Act of 2003 says, that the sender's identity must be clearly displayed. So pretty much the same as the Can-Span Act. Number two is also pretty much the same. It says that there has to be a get me out of here unsubscribe mechanism in every single email campaign. Third, just like with the Can-Span Act of 2003, you must also in Canada have a legit, valid physical address listed inside of every single email campaign. And then last, another major principle of the Canada Anti-Spam Act that is unique to Canada is that you must get the consent of every recipient to be on your list. So cold email is not even a thing in Canada. It's against the law. you have to obtain consent. Now, I'll be honest, there's a lot of debate out there about the difference between implied consent and express consent, and I can assure you, I'm not going there. My advice to you is that you are able to back it up and say, hey, here's the proof that they opted in, here's the consent they gave to receive my emails, because you don't want to break the law. If you live in the state of California, it has its own California Consumer Protection Act, and you want to make sure if you're doing business there, that you look over its basic principles and how it might impact your email marketing. Now, most areas in Europe are governed by the General Data Protection Regulation. And without looking into tremendous detail, its basic tenets are more focused on privacy and transparency in terms of how you store and what you do with your data. Again, if you're watching this course and you're doing business in Europe, make sure you know the laws, know the rules to which you are subject. In fact, no matter where you're doing business, it's good to know the rules for several reasons. One, be compliant to avoid getting in trouble or paying fees, and to get the most out of your email marketing. Like I said many times before, real estate is a relationship business. So because of that, it means if you're a stranger, your business is in danger. So now we talk about how to avoid stranger danger in your email marketing. Because if somebody doesn't recognize you in their inbox, if they don't know why they're getting your emails, then out of the gate, our email has a misset expectation, and the odds of it performing for you from a marketing standpoint is going to be limited. So a couple of quick tips. One, be mindful of how recipients end up on your email list. Now, we kind of talked about this briefly in an earlier video, but let's just think for a second. Let's take inventory as agents in terms of, okay, how do people end up getting their email addresses? Well, they sign in and open houses, or maybe you have a website whereby folks can search for homes, and you run ads on Google or something along those lines, or Facebook, and it drives traffic to your website. And then eventually your website requires a registration to continue looking at the pretty house pictures or something like that. And so that's another way of generating email addresses. Or maybe you're buying the leads from a third party, which is fine. Maybe it's Realtor.com, maybe it's Zillow, maybe it's even Google local services ads. My point being, there are so many ways to generate leads, to generate email addresses in real estate. The question becomes, do they readily know who you are? Do they readily know why they're getting your email? I'm not even talking about like consent right now. I know consent is obviously an important legal issue. We're just talking about laws and stuff. I'm simply talking about, do they make the association? Oh, that's the agent I met at the open house. Oh, that's the agent whose website I've been surfing, looking at properties, because they've got to know. If you want to start a relationship with somebody and build a relationship, because this is a relationship business, then being known is the starting point. Now, one more note on the real estate agent websites where folks can search for homes, and maybe you're running ads that drive traffic to the website, and the website forces a registration. In many cases, agents are using websites that are known as stealth websites or unbranded websites. In other words, it doesn't really say your name, the name of your team. It kind of minimizes logos because they're designed to kind of look like they're anonymous, ambiguous, but they don't belong to an agent. Because, I don't know, marketers somewhere think that's going to do better entice a consumer to actually submit their contact information if they think it's just some random search website versus an agent. I personally don't subscribe to that thinking, but it happens nonetheless. Now, if that describes you, my point right now is in saying to be aware, because you need to know, does the person who's my email on my email list, do they know me? Because my email assumes that they know me, but if they don't, there's going to be a disconnect. In fact, I will go one layer deeper. Getting ahead of myself, but later we're going to talk about list segmentation. And this could be one such use case whereby you're like, okay, I have leads who really know me, like they're my friends and family. I have leads who maybe don't really know me. And there's different layers of the relationship. And so maybe that's the opportunity for you to start segmenting your list so that you have the ability to warm up a list you really doesn't know you as well as others and get into that same level of equilibrium in terms of relationship. When you're a stranger, your business is in danger. Now, all that's one situation. Another is the old, oh, I didn't realize that was your email. I didn't know it came from you. I want to talk about making sure it is apparent who the email belongs to, who it's coming from in the inboxes of your recipients. Now, with any email service provider, you can certainly control the reply to address, username at whateverdomain.com you specify. That's an option, but it's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the actual sender name. You can also specify that my email is coming from, I don't know, Harry Potter. I can make it say whatever I want, that's the main point. And so I see a lot of mistakes where agents are sending maybe a team name or some kind of a naming convention that's kind of foreign to the folks who know you because they're different, it's a relationship business. So even if you're sending emails on behalf of a team, you should still include a name. So it could be like John at whatever team in the name section. It's super important that people don't say like, oh, I didn't realize that was your email, and then they deleted it without knowing. Now, another recommendation to avoid stranger danger is to actually ask the recipients on your email list if they could, it's called whitelist you, or add you to their contacts, or add you to their address book. Those are the different expressions, and they all mean the same thing. So every major mailbox provider, Gmail, Yahoo, Exchange, all of it, they have the ability for their users, i.e. your recipients, to actually say to them, I want to add this email address from Jason to my whitelist, or to my contacts, or to my address book. They use different verbiage, but it all means the same thing. And when they do that, from that moment going forward, every subsequent email I send to them, because they whitelisted me, basically says, pass go and collect $200. It avoids spam filters, because all these major mailbox providers, we haven't really gotten into yet, and we will, they all have spam filters, and they're trying to keep spam out of the inboxes of their users. Now, once they've added you to their contacts or address book, or whatever word you want to use to describe it based upon a mailbox provider, once they've done that, you're good going forward. But I would make sure to ask them a lot of different ways. In fact, I would start by doing this. I would segment my list based upon the major mailbox providers. These are all my Gmail users. These are all my Yahoo subscribers. These are all my Exchange users and so forth. And I would give each segmented list instructions on how to go about whitelisting your emails so that when you send your campaigns, you bypass spam filters and always end up in the inbox. Now, as we get going, we're going to talk about calls to action, the date in your emails. We're going to talk about standalone emails. We're going to talk about segmentation. So a lot of stuff I just alluded to, we have yet to talk about. But I just kind of want to get it in your brain that asking for folks to whitelist you, to put you in their contacts, is a massive win in terms of always getting your emails delivered to their inboxes and staying out of stranger danger.
Oops, sorry.
Now let's talk about how to definitely dodge spam filters, because every major mailbox provider, every minor mailbox provider, anybody from Comcast to Hotmail to Outlook to Gmail, they all have their own defenses, their own layers of spam filtering that are designed to find and identify messages that they think are spam and keep them out of the inboxes of their users. Because let's go backstory on this one. Roughly half of all emails sent every day are spam, and if you look at the year-over-year stats, spam is actually a pervasive issue every single year. What's more, there are a lot of different mailbox providers to whom I could, as a user, pledge my allegiance. And so it's highly competitive. Therefore, every inbox wants to provide the best experience for their users. So the regulations around filtering out spam are pretty strict. But now we're talking about helping deftly dodge those spam filters by doing email right. First and foremost, let's talk about what is email deliverability. Now, simply put, it has to do with the deliverability of your emails. What is that? That means, okay, if I send an email to my list, let's say there's 1,000 people on my list, or 10,000 people, or 100,000 people on my email list that I send out to, how many of those people on my list actually get their emails in their inboxes versus how many go to a junk folder or something along those lines? Think of it like this. Over here on your side of the hill is your email being sent. And you're trying to get it over to the inboxes of the recipients on this side of the hill, and there's this big valley, this big chasm in between you, and there's a bridge that's filled between it, and the bridge is owned and tolled and managed by the mailbox providers like Gmail, like Outlook, and others. And those are their spam filters. And their job is to determine who does or doesn't get across that bridge into their side of the camp where their users reside. So email deliverability then is really about the practice of how do I optimize my campaigns to get across the bridge into the inboxes of all my recipients. So now let's talk about how spam filters actually work so we can work with them in a partnership, or more like so we can definitely dodge them. There are 4 major variables every spam filter looks at. Again, the spam filters range. You've got spam filters that work for Microsoft, you've got spam filters that quote unquote work for Gmail, they all have their own spam filters. That's one of the inherent services of any mailbox provider. They provide spam filtering for their users. So it's a little bit different, but they all look at 4 major variables. four variables that we know what they are, we can stand straight and narrow and get across that bridge into our recipient's camp inbox land. Those four variables include your sender identity, your sender reputation, your subscriber engagement, and your campaign contents. So what is sender identity for starters? It is actually a combination of variables, things that are looked at together collectively that form your identity through the eyes of all the mailbox providers, Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, etc. And it starts with your IP address. What's an IP address? Let's go backstory to explain an IP address. Back in the beginning, fledgling days of the internet, when imagine you had college campuses all across the US, for instance, and they found a way to connect their mainframe machines to a network of all the other mainframe computer machines across the US. And they could actually send messages through the machines across the network to other machines in other locations. And so imagine at one university, there's, I don't know, 100 professors. And each one sits down, they start typing their message, but the machine sends it. The identity of the message came from the machine, and there were no such things as email addresses. Back then, it was just the IP address, which is only some random numbers that identify that this machine's in Albuquerque and that one's in Milwaukee. But you could have had numerous professors, for instance, who all said, hey, I'm going to log from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on the mainframe, and they could send messages using the same machine. Well, actually, that part hasn't really changed. Because if you're using like MailChimp or BombBomb or any major email service provider, it actually has its own server through which your emails get sent. Not just your emails, all the users' emails. So that does mean that if you choose an email service provider that doesn't really care about its reputation per se, and it allows its users to send spam to their list, and they get flagged, by extension, you also get flagged because you're sending from the same machine. It's the same server. So the first piece of your identity, in terms of mailbox providers, what they look at is actually the IP address that's coming from the server that you don't own. It's owned by MailChimp, or BombBomb, or Constant Contact, or whatever email service provider you're using, so choose wisely. Now, the next layer is your sender domain. Notice I didn't say your reply to email address. I said your domain. Sender domain is your next component of sender identity. So what's a domain? Well, for example, my domain is jasonpantana.com. Now I can have a bunch of different users at that domain. I can have admin at jasonpantana.com. I can have, I don't know, Carrie at jasonpantana.com. I can have all these different usernames. The domain itself is the next part of the identity. It doesn't matter if it came from Bob at whateverwebsite.com, it's the whateverwebsite.com, the domain itself that matters through the lens of what the mailbox provider looks like. So let's imagine for a second that you use, I don't know, maybe an email provided to you by your firm, by your brokerage, where there are, I don't know, 2,000 other agents who use the same domain. And they allow you to send emails on behalf of that domain. Well, guess what? If one of your partners starts spamming people or getting complaints, or they do some shady kind of stuff with email, by extension, if they get flagged, the whole domain goes down with them. So what are mailbox providers looking at? Well, so far, they're looking at the sender identity, that's the IP address, is shared, and they're looking at the sender domain. That may be shared or it may not be. You should choose your domain wisely. And in fact, I'm going to talk quite a bit more in future videos about that reply to domain. Now, the third component that makes up your sender identity, again, through the lens of what mailbox providers see about you, is your sender history. What is sender history? Well, think about a bank, for instance, that you get credit worthiness with the bank. When you've been a loyal patron of the bank, you've shown yourself to be willing to pay off debts and able to pay off debts and do everything right, they're willing to lend you more money or give you a better interest rate, stuff like that. In the same way, these mailbox providers reward good behavior. If the combination of your IP address and your domain working together shows a good, strong history of credit worthiness, then these mailbox providers are simply going to be much more willing to let you pass the bridge and get into the camp and get your emails delivered. Now, I call this thing sending history, but the actual technical term is really sending permanence. I just didn't want to say that word because it's a big word, but here's the meaning behind it. It has to do with the how often you send emails. If you're like a random noob and you just started some emails, you're unrecognized, you're an unknown quantity. So the mailbox providers are going to react to you with suspicion. So imagine this. Imagine I have an email list of 1,000 people, and let's say 600 of them have Gmail addresses. And so I send out my email, and I'm a new kid in town. I don't have a long permanence. I haven't been doing this for a while. I don't have a credit reputation per se. I'm new. And so the mailbox providers are naturally gonna look at me and say like, I don't trust this carrier, I don't wanna let spam into all of our users. So what they do is called throttling. Throttling does not mean they put it in junk or spam. What it means is they say, okay, you got 600 emails and you're trying to put into our users' inboxes. We're gonna let a few pass through and see what happens. And we're gonna hold the rest of them in limbo. My point being that there is such a benefit into establishing a strong history, strong pattern of trustworthiness with these mailbox providers where they can actually anticipate your messages and they trust you. It makes a big difference. Now, what a lot of people do is if they have a bad go, where their email deliverability starts to tank and they can't get it to work and they keep going to spam, they're like, oh, it must be the fault of my email service provider, which it might be. So they swap over to some new email service provider thinking that's gonna fix everything, or they change their domain thinking that's gonna fix everything. And it actually doesn't because of this component of sending history, sending permanence. You can't just start over from scratch and act like nothing happened. You are building muscle, so to speak, when you send emails again and again and again, which once again reinforces why it is so wise and important to choose the right ESP. They're your partner. So when you go through your research, choose the right one because you can't just switch when you want to switch. It's not that easy. Now, the fourth and last component that makes up your sender identity through the lens of how mobile providers see you is called sender authentication. There are different authentications. They're basically protocols or means of getting yourself verified. You can verify your domain, you can verify your IP address or the combination thereof. And basically they're permission slips that you're handing over digitally to the mailbox provider that says, I'm committed to pass this bridge and go into the can, all my recipients, your users, and drop my emails in their inbox. Most of the time, these authentications are actually done for you by your ESP, by your email service provider. So once again, when you're thinking about your ESP, since they're the ones who are mostly getting these authentications, make sure they have the right parts. And if they're taking this idea of deliverability seriously, making an ESP selection, I keep on saying it, is a very big decision. So we just talked about sender identity, which is the first layer that spam filters look at in terms of deciding, are they going to let you pass or not pass, are they going to put it in junk folders or not? It's kind of confusing. And the next one sort of works in tandem with it, and it's called sender reputation. Now, here's the way it works. Your sender reputation can actually influence your sender identity. What? Let me explain. For instance, if you send out a campaign and one of your recipients says, why am I receiving this? And they mark it as spam, or they move it to junk, or some action along those lines, that is considered a complaint. And that goes in your file folder. Now, the next thing to look out for is spam traps. What's a spam trap? A spam trap is actually a decoy email that is laid out to bait you from an actual mailbox provider. There's two types of spam traps. There are emails that were intended only for that purpose. They're called pristine spam traps. You don't even know that. They're just emails that literally were created and laid out there just hoping to catch you, mining for data across the web, scraping email addresses when you didn't earn the right or the consent to email somebody. But then there are what are called recycled spam traps. And those are typically old email addresses that were no longer used. And so the mailbox provider turned them into a spam trap. And so you may have an old email address on your list that you didn't know got turned into a spam trap, and uh-oh, it's hurting your reputation. So again, this is why I talk about cold versus warm email, and I don't recommend buying this and emailing it because you don't know whose address is on there, and it's very difficult to know by what means did the person selling me this list actually come and buy all these email addresses. They may be setting me up for a massive failure. In World War II, for instance, there was this project called Project Blue Dye. And it was designed to help find the moles inside your operation. So what someone would do if they suspected somebody was a mole is they would leak out fake information to the people they might think are the moles, and then they would listen back on their chatter channels to see if in their intelligence they heard that information repeated to themselves, which would confirm that that person was actually leaking information out that they were a mole. It was called Project Blue Dye. That's kind of what spam traps are. These mailbox providers literally lay the bait out on the web to see if you'll use them. And if you do, it signifies that you're a spammer. However, the challenge is that you may have spam traps that are part of your email list to no fault of your own, which is why later on we're going to talk about list hygiene and how to prune your list. And then the last part of your sender reputation is what's known as blacklists, sometimes called block lists. They're the same thing. Basically, all these mailbox providers actually keep a list, a blacklist, where they're like, do not take emails from so and so. And some of those lists are publicly available to be seen, and some of them aren't. And in fact, we're gonna talk about how you can actually get into programs with the major mailbox providers to find out if you're on the naughty list. So all those variables together make up your city reputation, and your city reputation actually influences your identity through the lens of your civic history, your track record. So these things, city identity, city reputation, they definitely go together. And it's all predicated on the idea that mailbox providers are just trying to make sure that their recipients are getting good quality emails in their inbox, and they're trying to keep spam out. So I don't want to overly alarm you with spam filters. I want to make you aware of spam filters. They're designed to work on your behalf if you're a sound marketer. Now, the next variable about spam filters, remember spam filters work for each respective mailbox provider. So Gmail has its own, Outlook has its own, they all have their own spam filters. And the next thing they go looking for before they give your email to their users in the inbox is the subscriber engagement of this campaign and other campaigns that you've sent. So think about it like this. I've got 1,000 people on my email list. We said 600 are going to Gmail. Well, Gmail now has 600 emails that it can measure and monitor, and it's actually looking at specific metrics. Of those 600 inside of its camp Gmail, how many people are historically opening my emails? What about clicking my emails? Are they sharing them, replying to them, saving them? It has optics of all the metrics inside of its own camp. And likewise, Yahoo has its own metrics of its users. So here's the deal. Let's say I've got an email list of 1,000 subscribers, 600 are Gmail, and let's say that I've got, let's call it 11 people who use a Comcast email. Well, Comcast, its spam filter has a much smaller sample size of measuring my overall subscriber engagement because only 11 of my people are actually their users, which means I could get into jail with one provider and not another. Maybe they find me to be a scammer over at Comcast and not over at Gmail. That's why it works differently. So maybe you have a habit of business where it's like Hotmail doesn't want my emails anymore. Well, that's because Hotmail is measuring subscriber engagement differently than any other mailbox provider, because they can only see what's limited to their users inside their mailbox. And the last thing, and I mean the last, that mailbox provider they're looking at in terms of spam filtering is the actual contents of your campaigns, your emails. But the funny thing is we put way undue emphasis on this stuff. So there are some things that are taboo in terms of what you should or shouldn't do in your email that may be marked as spam. But these are kind of the lesser evils compared to the other things we just talked about. So for example, you shouldn't write in all caps. But if you do, it's not going to be the straw that broke the camel's back. You shouldn't use like excessive punctuation, like 1,000 exclamation points, something like that. And you should also avoid embedding videos in your emails. You're like, wait, what? I thought you told us to always do this. Hang on a second. Now we're going to talk about this in a lot more depth. However, there is this thing called rich media. Rich media is stuff like Flash, videos, attachments, like a PDF attachment, all those things that they're actually in your emails can get you marked as spam. When we talk about videos, which we will, we're actually going to be talking about putting images that would link to videos on the web, not the actual videos that can be played in line in the actual email. That's going to get you potentially busted by a spam filter. And they say you should avoid red fonts, but this is my opinion. A red font is not going to be the make it or break it component that got you picked up by a spam filter. It's going to be a way more systemic issue than that, based on all the other stuff we're talking about. So I'm kind of underemphasizing red fonts. And then you should also watch out for misspellings and poor grammar and stuff like that, because it can trip a spam filter, but I would say much more importantly, because misspellings and bad grammar is a poor representation of your agent brand. And so it's always worth taking the time to double check and make sure that what you're sending to your recipients is really ready to be seen. Now, I know that was a lot of information, but to quote G.I. Joe, knowing is half the battle. And now that you know how spam filters function, how they work, and you understand that ultimately you're not a spammer, they're just trying to keep spammers out. And if you understand what they use to flag spammers and can avoid some of those things that would otherwise maybe seem innocent or you just didn't know, now you do know. And so you can take the steps to make sure that you have a high deliverability of your emails and that the marketing is working at your behalf.
So I actually find this funny because how much spam do you get, right? And so it doesn't seem to be stopping the spam coming in. So why is it so important that we have to protect against the spam going out?
So, like if you have follow-ups, whether you're sending out, they've got their own file that's keeping your.
Supposedly, so does OneSuite.
So this one's we so,
Yeah.
that here is
That's good, like social media.
Now, what I'm thinking, I will tell you, as I'm listening to this, and of course, I'm scrolled over here between the virtual assistants people nabbing me for things, and I had a deal fall apart this morning and a whole bunch of other things, but nevertheless, as I'm listening to this, I'm like, I don't want to do mass email. I'm thinking, well, so, keep in mind, one of the things we've got coming in later is I'm thinking, I'm not likely to send 1,000 emails to anybody. More likely, what I'm likely to do is if a lead comes in off of my farm or off of, say, my probate ad, I'm likely to set up an action plan that triggers a text, an email, a handwritten note, a postcard, whatever. That's onesies, twosies, not 200 at a time, 1,000 at a time, because that's not my style. So, yeah, I mean, it's good information, but what I'm hearing, I'm going, well, I don't know that I want to do that. Because honestly, I don't have time to deal with all this crap. Where if it's onesies, twosies, so we'll see.
I've been using email, all of us, so that emails,
Mhm.
I'm sending them just to people who express, basically my buyer and seller. And I just want, so I have 300-ish people in my database, but I'm not emailing them.
Right.
There's only about 80, 78 people in the who express by and selling.
Right.
6, 8, 12, and whatever. So I'm emailing them, I'm trying to get them hard, 3 times a week, 3 times a week.
Uh-huh.
But I gotta go and look at it, so I'm combining it with the current matters.
Uh-huh.
And I love it because I can take their content, which is awesome. And I just paste it in the email, and then I just check all the people that are tagged by it.
Yeah.
So anybody that's tagged by it, and then I just tell it what day and time, I would send it out at 7 or 8 AM, because it's found emails are open the most at 7 or 8 AM. Which is cool, you can tell the date and time. And then that's it, so they're getting like 3 emails, and it's all used super, because it's treating current matters, so it's current matters. It's relevant stuff, right? And I can see local things, which is nice, that's all I'm doing, it's not super fancy. I don't send it out to hundreds of thousands of people. But most people are, well, we'll see, I just changed my domain and also kind of interested in what this says. Because I had to move away from using my personal, I was going to Pro Williams, I had Pro Williams email.
Yeah.
And then I was like, crap, I'm going to start using my, Travis in the sun at Gmail,
Right.
don't use that, I tell you that, I'm not.
Yeah.
I still have, I'm trying to migrate.
Yeah.
Real estate stuff.
I understand.
So I've got more of a professional email now, and let all some people opens it, but I don't know, I'm just sharing for brainstorming.
Yeah.
I'm only setting it to 50 to 70 people.
Yeah, I think that's probably gonna be the majority of us. I mean, again, most of us in this brokerage are looking for a more personal way to do real estate. So, thousands of emails, but I do chuckle at this whole concept of spam because, I've had to quit using my Yahoo account for the most part, because I can't see a thing in it. Yeah, that's who Dora sends stuff to and all that for my personal licensing. Car registration, right, all that kind of stuff, and now I'm like, I can't see anything in it, it's so full of spam on a daily basis that I've had to now migrate all my personal family stuff, important family stuff over to a Gmail account, hoping that maybe I can actually see it.
What you might just ask, one thought is, but I do this once a year, but I should once a month, is set a task like in your phone or computer, and go in and delete all your junk folder.
I've
You
done
can just
that.
hit click all, one
Yeah.
clicks, and it's all gone. That's what we all should do, because you're right, things get buried.
Yeah, but it doesn't even land in junk, it lands in my inbox, I swear to God,
Then you can tell it.
I know, you gotta have time, you gotta understand, time is my enemy.
You got an AI, you got an AI person.
I am,
That's something you can.
but I don't know that I should give them my personal email, but my point is, I was like today, I'm ready to scream. Actually, I was almost in tears coming in this morning, because my phone's blowing up, I'm waiting for an appointment with a recruiter, and I'm like, stop.
When you don't, it's like, I feel like if I don't, at least email, and I probably should email it. And, but at least like the people that have said, hey, we're gonna buy or sell next year. If I'm not emailing them, I know what they're talking. And I want that attention. I want them to, even if they don't open my email, they see my name on the screen, like, oh, there's an email, I want to hit their ether. We want to hit their ether, you gotta be touching, you gotta be touching this, you gotta be top of mind. Because if you're not one or two, you're toast, like, we all want to be number one.
Yeah.
But if you're, at least, if you're number two, you might have a shot, right? But every time they get a handwritten card, they get a text, they get an email, those are different touches, right? I just want to make sure.
Right, so are you doing a newsletter or anything too?
No, not at the moment, no, not a technical.
So I'm not,
I want to read this with you, right?
That's what actions, I like it, I think it's.
yeah, I mean,
But
the only thing I don't like about them is they drive me crazy because they constantly want to help me with my CRM and I'm like, no, you aren't touching my CRM. Sit over there. I told you I wasn't ready for this. Don't pressure me into it. Because they pressured me into it over, well, we gotta sell. And I told him point blank, fine, I'll take advantage of your sell, but I don't have time right now. And so they keep bugging me, well, let us help you with your CRM. I'm like, no, you are not getting in my CRM. Shut up, stay in the corner, and when I get to it, I'll get to it. Otherwise, take my money. And if you're not gonna shut up about it, give me my money back and I'm done. I don't have time for this. You know, and they don't understand that when I'm up to here, I'm up to here, and I'll can you in a heartbeat and go elsewhere. I don't care if it costs me more.
All the actions.
But if you've got their email, if you've got emails for people, that's a good alternative. Because you can set it whether it's monthly, every other month, quarterly, whatever frequency you want. And the first 5 articles of the newsletter, you can personalize all you want. So you can put some keeping current matter stuff in there or whatever you want. And it's another way to use those emails you have without it just being another email. So, and I don't remember the cost on that.
It's $50 a month.
50, yeah.
I think one of the things I do too, I can just
Uh-huh.
add a little tidbit from my perspective is, I send out through follow loss, I have segmentations of my list for people who are past clients and people who are in the personal sphere, because past clients will get something different from people who have never bought. So there's this 2 different tactics I use, which are very, very similar, but the wording and the delivery are totally different. The thing that I try to focus on is when they open it, they have to have value. It can't just be repurposed BS from the web. It has to be something like, hey, it's spring. Did you think about cleaning your gutters? Here's 3 people I recommend that I've used before in the past. If you have any questions, reach out to me. I can give you some more information.
That's a good idea.
So there has to be very specific and not just kind of like generic crap. As soon as I think it's generic, I toss it. But since for my specific thing that I'm looking at, and it's like seasonal, and they just bought a home from me, I'm telling them, you know, this is the way to winterize your home, don't forget about these
Right.
steps or things like that. You're giving them some value.
Yeah.
And then they won't opt out. Different than that, then you're just.
I appreciate this. That's very organic, and thoughtful. You guys should actually think about that stuff.
No, I know.
I don't.
Yeah.
Chat GPT.
Okay. Your favorite.
Yeah.
Keeping current matters, if you look at keeping current matters, you basically look like a professional. Like, there's no better, if you want data, you want to look at data and charts and graphs, like, basically, that's where it's at. But it's a regurgitation.
Well, and I think both of them work, really.
But I think you use both.
Yeah.
I think like better doing what you're doing.
It's more human touch. I don't think it's coming from a bot.
Yeah. I think when you've got the kind of material you got, I think that's useful. And I think in a perfect world, I would blend them, right? Because not every month do you have a recommendation of, hey, are you gonna have think about having your windows cleaned for spring or your gutters or whatever, right? There are months that you're like, what do I come up with now? But, then I think when you do that, you either put in a market update from the lender, hey, curious where we're going, or you grab something off of Keep It Current Matters. I think there's a lot of different things you can pull in. I think whatever you do that is part of your personality and then fits, adding value rather than just a, hey, don't forget, you're thinking about selling or buying. I think outside of that, any of these are great options. You just gotta use what works for you.
Yeah, I think this is good too, is I never say, hey, I'm a realtor, consider me, it's
Right.
obvious I am one. I don't need to right away.
Right.
That just seems cheesy and
Yeah.
like kind of salesy, so I never say that.
Right, and I think sometimes too, we forget about the little things, like, we've got a sphere that's, yeah, we have a sphere person that is, got an assignment. We know they're not likely gonna sell, they're likely gonna rent. I just reached out to him yesterday though and said, hey, congratulations on the assignment. I know you guys were looking to sell, but you were considering renting and you had asked us for some comps or had told us you might want help with some rental comps. I know the dust is settling, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help you any way we can. Even if that means you're self-managing your rental and you need us to keep an eye on something, because they live across the street from Owen, but it's $1 million home. So again, it's sometimes with, especially Sphere or past clients, it's really important sometimes for us to just offer ourselves, right? Even though we know, because it's those people that I think sometimes can become our biggest advocate because they knew there was nothing in it for us other than just to be helpful. And I think what I have gotten out of our lessons thus far, I don't think any one thing does it, right? I don't think email by itself does it, social media posting by itself does it, text by itself does it, any more than cold calling by itself does it. And so that's where, when I saw the stuff that Mike was doing up in Parker, where he was automating as different things come into his computer, these different action plans to have a variety of touch points to a client or potential client. I was like, yeah, I really like that, because some are going to respond to a postcard landing in the mail. Others are going to respond to a text. Some will respond to a phone call. Others will be, sometimes it'll be a series of 3 or 4 of those, and they finally go, okay, yeah, now I'm ready to listen.
Yeah, you're right.
It's
It's that omni-channel approach. I think we have to consider wholeheartedly when we're doing any of our is we're the lines on the basketball and we're telling you that's exactly where we want to get them. And I'm on my phone, I'm on my email right now. I get mail. I do answer my phone. So if you're considering all those avenues, yeah, they're all gonna work. You have to make sure you get them all.
Yeah.
Because one is going to be secret sauce. It's that everything approach. Because it takes them 7 touches, right? Before they actually respond at least. And they're like, all right, geez, what is this guy saying?
Well, on that point, particularly to listings, those of us that are like, I'm more listing focused, I don't know that I try to focus on buyers, they're just gonna come, people who sell a house and buy another, right? So I try to be 70% listings, 30% buyers. It's not that yet. It's not either for the world. But there are some people that have the mindset that if they market themselves well, they're putting themselves out there, they're on Instagram, Facebook, and I get their emails 3-4 times a week. They're also gonna market. People think that they're marketing themselves. Jay, right? Okay? Yeah, like you're like, God, Jay is everywhere. You're clearly marketing yourself, putting yourself out there. I'm gonna think you're gonna do this in the house. I think that's why we have to, it's that.
some people do. I could
Some
say,
people
my
still
sphere will
market.
not think that way at all.
Yeah, a lot of people do that.
The 55, 65 age people I could tell, because most of my sphere hate realtors, just like I did. They're like, yeah, because they're much stuff, right? They're like, yeah, anybody can send me a piece of marketing, but it honestly, for my sphere, it's really about offering help. Reaching out when we hear one of them's sick. I mean, it's the personal element thing. We've dropped off care, packages for us. A lot of our past clients are also Sphere and Air Force peers. And so, to just treat them like that friend as opposed to that client. And that, I think, for them goes a long way, because they know that Lockett or whatever her name is from Remax, she might have great marketing and billboards around town, but that doesn't mean that they're gonna treat her for their specific needs. So again, your clients, Travis, are gonna look very different than mine, because, again, mine, I tend to have something. Yeah, but I don't know that that's true. I think that a lot of the population is actually a little bit more discerning than that. And that it's really about your messaging and your value proposition, and do you do what you say? Because again, realtors have a nasty reputation for being great talkers and no follow.
Yeah, and that's the major point, I think, is to, because it's so oversaturated, and that is kind of like the baseline sign of, well, you're just a cheesy salesman, you have to inject, if you don't, you have to follow through. You're just gonna be moved in with the rest of them and considered as that university. I'm traditionally not.
But again, we're in a town of what, 600,000 people or more, and so all of us are really only looking for, let's say, 10 to 40 clients a year, depending on where you're at. And so of that 600,000 or whatever our population is in the area, we're really only needing to resonate with a very, very small number. So what works for you, Travis, and what works for me or works for Edwin is going to be very different. And it's okay, they should be different. Because you're gonna try to draw the people through to you that kind of resonate with you, and the people that resonate with me, they're gonna be two very different groups.
Well,
And we can both.
I think it's like in everything, it's the Popeyes, the brand cupcakes, whatever you said, but then also like, hit email and social media, I wouldn't want to judge and want to go, yeah, that's not really, people don't think that way, we don't really know how people think.
But you don't need to hit all 600,000 is my point. I don't have to resonate with all 600,000. I don't want to resonate with all 600,000. I want to resonate with the people that are gonna enjoy working with me and vice versa. And in my world, really, I only need that to be about 40 a year. And so if somebody's looking for the whiz bang kid or the tech orientation, or frankly, me to show up in a suit, it ain't happening. But last week, or this Monday, when I walked to 1.5 million and I showed up ready to walk on a 36-acre property that had animals on it. And as Coach Andy said yesterday, I was basically mirroring her, because she was a horse person, she was an animal person, and I knew it. And I showed up ready to walk a 36-acre property. I just showed the heels like I have on today. So had I done that, I would have done before I even got the front door, But that lady is gonna resonate more with me than she probably would you, because, I've owned animals, I've moved animals across state lines, I've done all that. So when she's like, yeah, man, this is the biggest move I've ever done, I'm like, yep, holy hell, I've been there. So again, that's just one person of 600,000, I don't need 600,000, so. All right, we'll see if we can.
Let us now discuss the edicts of email. What are the top mistakes that email marketers make that really hold back or kind of thwart their email performance potential? I want to go through a list of top five mistakes I tend to see. The first one is forgetting to use the pre-header, or sometimes it's called the preview text. All right, so here I am on my iPhone, and I use by line. Let's break it apart. I see the first email at the top, it says Matt Curtis Real Estate. That's the sender name, Matt Curtis Real Estate. And then the next line says housing prices dropping, question mark. That is the subject line. But what comes below it is called the pre-header or the preview text. And this is what people forget about. It says, we finally have some good news to report for buyers, exclamation point. Now that text can be customized, and a lot of agents, a lot of email marketers forget to do that. If you don't customize the preview text, A, you're giving up really tremendous screen real estate. B, it's going to go with default text. It might say something like unsubscribe, update your preferences, or if you're having trouble viewing this email, click here to view it in the browser. In other words, that preview text, when not customized, gives away the fact that you're sending out a full email. And so customize it. Pretty much every email service provider out there allows you to customize the preview text. So do it. Make sure that it supports your subject line, and it further entices the viewer to say, I can open this email and look at it. Our next edict, i.e. thing to be avoided because it can thwart your email performance, is what I call deletable subject lines. Now, I talked about subject lines through the lens that keep them short, because mobile devices have a limited number of characters for subject lines. I also talked about personalizing subject lines that may be a good play for you, whether you do the salutation or the subject line. But now I want to talk about making subject lines that entice me, the recipient, to want to open your email, to want to read your email, to want to click through the email and engage with it. So really this, when should you write your subject line? Most people make the mistake of doing it first. I'm going to write the subject line and then I'm going to build the message out. Wrong. You should write the subject line last, after you know what the contents of the email are, and what the most juicy part of the information is. So the fact that you can think to entice viewers to click into the email, read it, and then interact. Don't use the legal subject lines. Edict number 3 is don't send your emails at random. Now, we're gonna talk about when is the best time to send in a future video, but my point to you right now is don't do it at lit. Don't do it whenever you want. Don't do it at random, because think back to when we talked about spam filters. Spam filters are looking at sender history, sender permanence. They're looking for a repetition. They're looking for consistency. They're looking to validate that this person is legitimate and we're okay letting their emails come through and get delivered into inboxes because they're consistent. So my point to you now is get on a cadence, get on a rotation where you're sending an email once a day, every other day, once a week. I'm not talking about how often yet. I'm just talking about the need for consistency in when you send your emails, because it bodes better in terms of deliverability for every one of your campaigns. Send on a schedule. Edict number 4 is unhygienic list management. I present for your consideration a gardening metaphor. Nothing makes the hedges grow like pruning them. And so you, as the email keeper of your recipients, need to be willing to actually clean up your list. Now, I'm going to talk in a future video about completely cut off the list if you do not, but I just want to say as a general listen to you, you need to prune your list, because if you really want it to grow like those hedges, you've got to take out the dead weight. Think about it through the lens of spam filters. Overall engagement of your subscribers is a ratio they're always balancing. Okay, there's 1,000 people and 10 people interact. Well, what if there's only 700 people and 10 people interact? My ratio of engagement just went up, so my deliverability is going to go up. What I've seen time and again is that when people let the old deadweight emails go, the ones who are disengaged, the ones who you got like 10 years ago, you have no idea if they're even valid. What oftentimes happens is maybe you got rid of some spam traps in the process, but whatever the case is, you improve your overall subscriber engagement, which helps your list grow. Think about the lens of like social media followers. You might have 10,000 social media followers, but do you really? How many are actually engaging with your content? The actual number of followers is kind of a fake number. And in the same spirit of that, the actual number of email recipients on your list is kind of a fake number. Nobody cares about that. They care about the results created through the emails. So let go of the fake number if it's holding you back. Prune the list and let your list grow with people who want to hear from you. And our final edict, that is practice to be avoided, is resending your email campaign to the unopened. Inside of just about every single email service provider, platform you use for sending your bulk mass email campaigns, there is this little innocent looking button that says resend unopened. And it just seems like it's just there. I should just take it. I should just do it. And I don't know why it's there, because the idea of it is a very bad idea. So basically what it does is it will look at who opened the email, and anybody who didn't open the email, you can just click one button and it's going to send the campaign to them again. First and foremost, open rates aren't even reliable. We already talked about that. Secondarily, these are people who we don't know why they didn't open it the first time. Maybe they missed it. Maybe they got 1,000 emails and they got buried. Maybe it went to spam for some unknown reason. But again, sending it again is a very big risk. What if they did see it and they opted not open it? Now I'm giving them a reason, a motivation to say, enough with this list. Mark it junk, spam, complain, opt out. That's a problem. Secondarily, what if it did go to their junk folder or spam? So I'm going to send it again, the same campaign that already tripped the spam filter once. I'm going to hit it again. This is a bad idea. I don't know why most email service providers put that little button there, but I am advising against ever using it. Last one, so sender tool is trash. Believe it or not, there are websites where what they do is they monitor your sender reputation. In other words, how are you perceived by mailbox providers when you send emails to your list of recipients? Some of those scores are basically a good, bad, otherwise kind of rating. And sometimes they give you like a number between 0 and 100. But they can tell you where you stand with the mailbox providers in terms of your overall reputation. Now, reputation involves your domain's reputation, your IP address's reputation, and all of that kind of stuff. Now, there are a couple of major platforms that a lot of email marketers use if they want to kind of spy and see how the reputation looks. I'm really talking to the email marketer who's actually having trouble with email deliverability, with spam issues. And so maybe your sender score is trash. We got to get that score back up into positive. So I think the best known platform out there for managing, kind of checking in on your status, your score as a sender is senderscore.org. If you have score.org, you can get a free score. They are gonna want like an email address, and they're gonna send you marketing, stuff like that, and there are paid layers to their service, be advised. But essentially, all you do is give them, here's the domain I sent from, here's the IP address I sent from, and then Presto, they're gonna give you a score. They're gonna tell you where you stand in terms of how mailboxes might be regarding you as a sender. And they're gonna tell you what to do prescriptively if you need to get out of the red and into the green. And so they give you instructions. Now, I'm talking specifically to email marketers who are having an issue with spam or deliverability. If you're getting great results, then don't worry about this right now, but it's here for you if you ever need it. Another tool, this one's free, you can use it all the time, it's called Barracuda Central. Barracuda does not check your domain, it only checks your IP address, which means the IP address of your email service provider. So think about it like this. If you suspect that you're having an issue with your ESP, I'm not gonna name any names, but whatever the company is, who you're using to send emails, you can actually check in on the servers they use. Let's go one layer deeper for a second. Of these email service providers that exist, some of them charge a fee, and some of them don't. It's been my experience that the freebie email ones, I'm going to exclude MailChimp. MailChimp does a great job. But it's been my experience otherwise that the freebie email service providers tend to kind of use what are called pooled servers. They basically pile everybody into the same server, thereby increasing the probability that somebody who's sending emails to their list from that server is spamming people, and you are going to become guilty by association. You tend to get what you pay for when it comes to email service providers. Nonetheless, if you suspect that your emails are being sent through maybe a troublesome server, here's how you check, and warning, this is slightly technical. Now here I am looking at an email from Matt Curtis, and here's the basic information. I've got who it's from, Matt Curtis. I've got what the subject line is, housing prices dropping. This is the same email I showed you from my mobile phone. And then I've got who it's to, me, Jason Pantana. This is the email header, but there's a lot of information in that header that we're not being shown. So I'm on a Mac. If I hit Command-Shift-H, it reveals all the header information. This is all the stuff that Gmail and Outlook and all the mailbox providers are looking at to determine the efficacy of this email. I know this is technical, but look here for a second. Somewhere inside this header, we're going to find the IP address of the server that sent this email to me. And here's our server. I'm simply going to copy this text, this IP address to my clipboard, Command-C to copy on the back. And then I open up Barracuda and I simply paste my IP address, check reputation, and presto, we're in green. It is currently not listed as poor on the Barracuda network. Yay! It's a good IP address. So that means Matt Curtis is clearly working with a very good and reputable email service provider. So that's how you assess where your standing is with these mailbox providers. Now let's talk about how to get back on the good side of the mailbox. Now, the first thing we gotta do is figure out what most likely got you on Santa's naughty list. And it's usually the same thing or two. It's usually you put down your sister's hair, don't do that, right? Something simple is typically the explanation. And so the first thing you should look for is, have you seen an uptick in complaints from your recipients? More people marked you as spam or moved you to junk. If that's what happened, that's the issue. You need to remove those people from your list. But chances are better that it's just an overall list hygiene issue. That's right. That is typically the issue. It's list hygiene. It's failing to turn people off your list who you should have cut. So I said I was going to talk about this before. Now we talk about it. Who do I cut and prune off the email list to keep it all in good standing? First segment to get rid of is any kind of a role-based username in an email. So imagine the domain is jasonpantana.com, but let's pretend you have emails that are like info@website.com. It's admin@website.com. Those are probably not very active accounts. They're probably not reading the email per se. So I would say cut them. If you have role-based username emails, that's a mouthful, cut them. Now, the next one takes a bit more willpower. You should prune off your inactive or disengaged email recipients. Okay, what does it mean to be disengaged or inactive? It means that they haven't clicked, or we're going to rely somewhat on open rates, but they haven't done anything that we can measure with any email in some extended period of time. Okay, how much time? How long? Well, that depends on how many emails you send. If you send one email a month, then maybe they haven't done anything with any email for like 6 months. That would be a reasonable span of time to measure disengagement. However, if you send an email like every day and they haven't done anything with any of them in like 2 weeks, that could put you in some serious hot water, so to speak. And so maybe they should be the ones marked as inactive or disengaged. My point to you now is you need to get a process that identifies when do I think people are inactive or disengaged, and it depends on how often you're sending an email. I'll give you some rules of thumb. I think you should probably look through your list twice a year. I think that if you're sending emails even once a week or once a month, if they haven't opened or engaged with something in 3 to 6 months, that's when I would flag them as disengaged. Let me remind you why we're doing this. We're doing this because one of the things that every mailbox provider measures is the overall engagement of your list. If I remove dead weight, the ratio gets better. If I have fewer emails, I get rid of the ones who weren't engaging, then the number goes up, it makes my score better. Yay, I win against all the spam filters. That's one reason. Now, the other thing to think about is that inactive subscribers pose a pretty serious threat of people who are likely to complain. They might mark you as junk, they might mark you as spam. They're probably more likely to do that than to opt out, or they would have already opted out. And if they do mark you as spam or junk, they likely don't know the implications of what that means to you. My point to you right now is you would have been better off if you had preemptively removed disengaged subscribers because they're voting that they don't want your content by not engaging with it. So don't give it to them. Marketing, any kind of marketing, is neutral. It can do good for your brand or it can do harm to your brand. It depends on if the audience wants it or not. It's all about that list. You're marketing to a list. Let's continue our riveting conversation about overall list hygiene. Specifically, let's talk about bounced emails. Bounced emails are bad. First and foremost, though, what are bounced emails? Well, they're emails that were never delivered. Email was undeliverable. So think about it like this. When you typically send an email campaign, so far we've been talking about avoiding spam filters. Basically, there's a line of demarcation, and each mailbox provider says your email is either going in an inbox or it's going in a junk folder. And that's been the only option. But there's a third option. The email could bounce. What does that mean? It means the email literally didn't even get over to the mailbox provider at all. There was an error of some kind. Now, there's two types of bounces. There's a soft bounce and a hard bounce. A soft bounce means that there was some kind of a glitch, usually on the side of the actual recipient, and it may resolve itself. But a hard bounce means that the email address is no longer valid, it's a permanent error, and it should be immediately removed from your list. One of the good news for you is that most email service providers actually manage bounces for you. They'll create your list for you. So you don't have to worry about that necessarily. However, the reason why I tell you is A, awareness, and B, it's so that if you keep getting bounced emails, you might say, bounce is bad. Is there a particular channel where I'm building my list from that's causing more bogus emails to come in? So like maybe it's my website. Maybe I'm running ads to a website and I keep getting bogus emails, I keep bouncing. Watch me stop trying to get emails there. That's my imperative to you, is understand, okay, how am I coming into possession of all these emails that invariably bounce? And how do I stop that? So I can protect the quality of my list and ensure that everybody else isn't going to be penalized and no longer see my emails because of these bad bogus emails. Bounces are bad. And last to talk about the list hygiene in terms of who we're taking off the list is I would be very wary of continuing to send to any email addresses you purchased through some third-party lists. And here's why. Those lists have a high probability of containing some spam traffic because you don't necessarily know how they came into possession of all the emails that you purchased. And a spam trap, let me remind you, is basically a decoy email that's laid out as bait by mailbox providers because they're trying to find people who have bad practices for email and they're spammers. And so especially if you just notice maybe a decline in your Tinder score, or you're having issues with spam and deliverability, but you just purchased a list and you just started emailing that list, cease and desist emailing to that list. Again, it goes back to the whole permission marketing conversation. Cold email, warm email, you know where I stand. I'm a major fan of warm email. The job of your marketing is to position you favorably to those who are willing to receive that marketing. Now, another good practice for any email marketer, regardless of whether or not your sender score is quote unquote in the trash, is to set up what are called feedback loops with the major mailbox providers. Nearly every mailbox provider, Gmail, Microsoft, Yahoo, they provide what's called a feedback loop whereby you as the sender can enroll in a feedback loop. What that means is if your campaigns or emails at any point have issues with delivery or there's complaints against you, then the mailbox will actually keep you in the loop. They're going to provide you with analytics, details, and data so that you can figure out, okay, what am I doing wrong, or what's working, what's not working, how do I repair this issue, so you can maintain a healthy relationship with every major mailbox provider. Now, the feedback loops I recommend you get started with first include Google, Microsoft, and Yahoo. Google calls theirs Gmail Postmaster Tools. Microsoft, for Outlook, calls theirs Microsoft SNDS, Small Network Data Services. And then last, Yahoo very cleverly calls theirs complaint feedback loop. we'll put links to all three in the resource book. So if your cinder score is trash, well, it's not permanent and it can be fixed. The mistake so many email marketers make is when they get themselves into a tough situation in terms of their reputation, they think, I'll just cut, they can do something new. They get a new domain, they get a new IP address, or a new ESP, and they think that's gonna fix the problem, but it doesn't. There's only one way to deal with a low cinder score. Find the problem, fix it.
All right. All right, so we've got basically round 2 for next week. And then we'll be done with the subject, which is what I changed in the schedule last. So since we said we're gonna do the social code one in 2 sessions instead of 3. So any additional thoughts from what we were chatting about earlier? No. So you two are using email, kind of mass, not really, but sort of mass. Anybody else? I don't know.
Aside from that, my home actually is newsletter, but that's different, I'm not really. Somebody else.
Yeah,
So you give them like a DOS USB daters, my links, and
Yeah,
it just runs.
I mean, you can go in and add custom stuff to it now,
and then it goes,
but you don't have to.
But they build it out for you, everything based on the season and all that.
Yeah, and you can change your style of the work, you can change them out, put it on it, you can do up to 7, 8, you can do them if you want, you don't want to do too many of them. So it's like,
Yeah. How many emails, is that monthly or spice them, how?
Whatever you tell them.
I'm doing mine monthly.
Okay.
I think it was.
Yeah,
Can you see your open rate, subscriber rate and all that?
yeah. You can do them as little as you want too, so like I have no intentions of doing it monthly, because my sphere, that's just not how they roll. So when I finally get it ready, I'll probably do it every other month, because they're already getting other stuff. So you can set it up as, most frequent you can do is every 2 weeks, or you can go as little as you want. You can do quarterly if you want.
What's terms?
Home actions, it's, so basically it's, already branded with Realty One Group, it's very seasonal, but you can also go and customize, the first 5, I think you can customize, but you can switch any of them out. It's also a service we use for recruiting. And there's been times that I just let it roll like it is, and then there's other times that I want to emphasize different things going on in the market, and I've done some custom articles and just different stuff, but most of the time it's just on autoplay, because it's really about brand recognition, right? It's really not about, it's not like what you guys are dealing with, your various touch points, whether it's keeping current matter stuff or your vendors' recommendations seasonally. Those to me are like on top of
But you could
a
do that.
newsletter.
You could create a specific one and make your own. I've done it.
You could, I kind of would keep them separate because it's another touch point, right? Because you don't know which touch points matter to them, and each client's different. One client's gonna be really religious about looking at your newsletters, and then you might have a handful that don't even bother, right? But they'll notice your especially.
Something I don't care if
Yeah,
they're opening them, but they're gonna see my name in their box. That's my whole agenda, it's just like, I just want to see my name.
so a variety is usually, but figuring out what that looks like.
So the ones that do love it, they're probably like, oh, I just love your newsletter.
Well,
They'll either reply to that or they'll say, we see it. There's always like,
Well, we're here, we're, got a few extra minutes. Anything else we want to talk about today, or? No. All right, well, I'm gonna cut you guys loose today early then. All right. That was enough videos for one day. All right, stop share.
I got the videos, you can like speed them up. It's almost like